shared here. Okay, everybody's seeing their screen pretty well?
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So thanks so much for joining us today. We're talking about cleanup on aisle 4. That's the title. Chris came up with it. Great idea. Fixing broken agile transformations with Kanban. It's what we do all the time. And with that said, is there any way to stop that beep coming in from that person trying to get in? Is there any way to stop that, or is it just going to keep popping up? Okay.
Yeah, sadly, I don't think that's going to be able to be possible because you're a co-host, so you're still going to hear the notification on your end. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
No,
So
it's
let's
okay.
get started.
So I'm gonna go ahead and remove that so you don't get distracted, sir. My apologies.
No
Give
worries.
me one
Okay,
second.
Yeah, it's also important to note when we did this in California last month, we entered the stage with a bucket, a mop, and some cleaning rags, because that's sometimes the way that we feel when we get called in to fix some transformation.
Yeah, just so you guys know, it's Chris and Scott, and we feel like the head janitors because we're always going to clean stuff up. It's what we've been doing together for about the last 5 years, and this is what we're going to talk about.
And
we're
Milton,
going to jump.
I was just going to say, and Milton, chime in along the way if you want to.
Yeah, I love it. So we're going to jump right into what we're seeing out there. I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but this is one situation we ran into over the last several years. You know, as a GM for a large organization, hey, I really like that Spotify model. Let's do that. And it really didn't matter what we said. They decided that was the cool model that they wanted to do. And so, you know, they did what they normally do, which is, you know, rename teams and reshuffle them a little bit. They created some guilds, which guilds were very important. That was the most important piece, creating the guilds. Then rename some of the meetings, you know, the hour-long stand-ups, and a little bit of reorganization. And then, of course, all big bang, so all at once. And the result, of course, was no positive business outcomes. So situation number 2, leader of a company says, hey, you need to get agile. Told the manager this. The manager said, cool, I'm going to go get agile and get this whole organization agile. Asked for the resources, got approved all the way up into finance, and then got rejected. And they said, go buy a book. So we did. And guess what? He came to the conclusion that he wanted to implement the Big Bang into the Spotify model. And again, no process visualization, no real change. And what they got was complete chaos. And of course, no business outcomes that were positive. So with that said, and again, we're not going to really talk much about Chris and Scott. You know, you guys can see us on LinkedIn. We'd be more than happy to connect with you on LinkedIn, but we're not going to go into any of that. And we don't have anything to sell you. So we're just going to talk about Kanban. So we're going to share the things that have worked for us. It may not be what works for you. It may not be your situation, but we just want to share the experiences that we've had in very large companies and clients of very large companies. And we're going to focus on as well on the less theoretical, the less much less philosophy, and much more on the practical things that we've seen that we think we can provide back to the community. And I will tell you that we went to the Global Kanban Summit, and we did this on purpose. Chris and I are up on the stage. You know, we've already put our mop and our bucket away, and our spray and our rag. We put it away, and we said, you know what? Chris and I really don't care about Kanban. And we stopped and we waited. And you could hear the air go out of the room. It was really cool. And the only reason that we use Kanban is because it works. You know, it's the best way that we found to accomplish the turnarounds that we're trying to do in broken agile transformations. And so that's why we use it. And then in this too is, you know, Chris and I both like to talk. And of course, if you let us, we'll just talk away. But this is much better when you guys ask questions and stop us and say, hey, what about this or what about that? And we can have a quick little conversation. Or if we have it later on in the presentation, we may defer you there, but otherwise we'll just have a conversation.
I was just going to say, if there's something that causes moral outrage, please let us know, because one of the things that Scott and I enjoy doing is testing ourselves on these things. That's the only way we continue to improve what we're delivering to our clients. So have at it, just jump in with both feet, and that's really how we also learn. So although we're sharing, we're trying to learn here too from all you folks.
Yeah, and we're not the kind of people who think that we know everything and just put it to us and we'll tell you the answer. We don't. We know a lot about a pretty thin sliver, and your experience may be different. So we've talked about the intro into this. We're going to touch a little bit about the landscape that we see. And maybe you guys are seeing the same thing, but we really don't see too many normal, regular transformations of IT anymore. Hey, we want to move to Agile. We don't see a lot of that and haven't for a few years. But what we have seen are a couple things. One, we've seen a shift to the left, meaning the upstream Kanban, the product management, finance, support, all kinds of other things. We see a lot of business side transformations now, or business side areas joining that Agile transformation. We also see a ton of course corrections. And that means, those transformations that, like you saw in the stories, or they haven't quite got what they wanted, or they've gotten something, but they want more out of their Agile transformation. Or in some cases, a disruptive transformation that we've got to clean up. And then, of course, our current one's pretty tough. It's a very large, highly matrixed, very complex organization, and so much fun. And I want to say one more thought about this is, it's kind of a funny world. I would say this is more American business, and this is what we know more than the rest of the areas is, large companies have this thing when they go through tough times, like the times are coming up, they talk about expense reduction. And often that leads to a movement of resources offshoring to different countries, which is fantastic in a lot of ways. But in some ways, it allows, because they're cutting expenses in order to be more profitable, in some ways it allows that deferral of the real change that we really need to get to, the underlying processes where there are problems. And we see that a lot because it's easier. And you know how chief operating officers and CEOs are, they usually have 3 or 4, major tools in their toolkit. And this is one of them.
Yeah, and labor arbitrage, which is what Scott's talking about. A bad process here is a bad process there. So it's really something that you got to think about. When those business dynamics are introduced.
Are you guys seeing the same thing? What are you guys seeing?
It is, and then it's out of your direct control, because it's not where you can touch it, right? Where you have many more challenges trying to manage it.
Interesting. Anybody else?
Yeah, a lot of shift is to these concepts of managed service providers, where they say I have a pool of capabilities, and you buy from those capabilities. The challenge I've been seeing over the last maybe like 4 years is the cost versus benefit. Organizations are challenged to balance that out, where they're seeing what the cost is, but a few months in, they're all like, I'm not really sure I'm getting the benefit from this service. And they're trying to figure out how they can visualize what the actual benefit is. I can see you smiling. You know what I'm talking about. I'm going to go ahead and shut up. I think Mauro has his hand up. So
yeah,
I wanted to share news from yesterday. I think the Gap, the American retail fashion brand, has been downsizing their finance departments. I think 150 people are going to be jobs are going to be lost, and some of them are going to be moved to India. So that's what's happening, and this has been going on. This kind of rationalization is very common in North America, up and down, downsizing, upsizing, etc. But in my career as a consultant, I've noticed 3 usual patterns around business operating models to try to shift, increase what they call efficiency, which is just accounting fake efficiency. One of them is managed service providers, like Marcelo talked about. Yeah, so that's outsourcing. That could be it could be far away. I don't remember the technical term. Could be offshore or nearshore, etc. The other one is centers of excellence. That's essentially another attempt at metrics organizations. So reorganizing people around, work around people and grouping them together to try to achieve some cost efficiencies. And the third one is splitting work around other existing departments by usually recruiting juniors and firing expensive, experienced people.
Yeah.
All of them, none of them really helpful. Just you can make them look good on a balance sheet because you can always tweak the numbers.
We're going to go ahead. I apologize. I know we've got a hands up still. We've got a whole bunch to cover, and if it's okay, we'll go ahead and move on. I apologize. So we're going to go into the framework that we use. We've been using this for quite a few years. Milton, you recognize this well. So this is our process. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the first few. We do fact finding, of course, and some kind of due diligence. It could be 20 minutes, it could be 2 months. It really depends on the organization. But we always do that first because we want to get a lay of the land and understand where we're going. The very second thing we do is we break down the work types of a team into, so when we say work types, we mean what are their menu of services? What are the main things that they do, they offer to their internal, external clients? And it could be a list of 5 or 50 or, however many, and we're always, combining and extruding and getting to where we think it's the right level for them. And this is an example down below. So this is a real example for one team. I think it was a team of architects. And we narrowed it down to 5 different services that they offer the organization. And we usually do this in Mural. Then that's followed by moving right into value stream mapping. And I'll say that, value stream mapping, if you guys have done it, and I'm sure a lot of you have, there's a real art to it. And we typically start with what are the process steps, the general process steps, happy path, those types of things. The one time we don't do it by the happy path first is if it's a team that has a lot of parallel things going on at once and it's very complex, we might switch off. We might go to exit criteria first, and then just maybe on a spreadsheet, put all the exit criteria. Here's all the things I do first. Can you guys see my cursor?
Yep.
Awesome. And then, here's all the things I do second. You move some back and forth until you get everybody to nod their head. And of course, one of the great benefits of this is you get the whole team on the same page, which, I don't know if you guys have done this. Sometimes it takes days because the team is arguing so much about their own process. It's pretty hilarious. But so it was very parallel in the processes. We might go and do the exit criteria and then go back and name these columns. But typically we just do the process.
And the one thing I want to mention here is one thing you don't see is we're not doing formal education with our stakeholders at this point.
Yep.
We used to do that, and we've shifted our approach, our model significantly, that we're now engaging in, you could call it just-in-time education or contextual information. We find that we get to the heart of the matter much faster if we don't put those hurdles in front of them in terms of education. And that in large part was an outcome from COVID and travel restrictions. We used to do all of this with face-to-face with lots of workshops. Now
about 80 of them together, 2-day workshops.
Yep.
And we don't do that anymore. Okay, so once we have that value stream, then we physically go out and build the first board for the team. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, we have foundational training here, but I would say it's morphed much more into the targeted training that Chris is talking about. And then, of course, we have We initiate the cadences, then we have a period of active coaching, and then we have a period of on-demand guidance. But we use this general framework for all of our transformations. So that's the framework. So let's go to the foundation of really, we're getting to the heart of what we want to give you guys back to the community here. And that is the foundational stuff that we work on. And the key here for us, and one of the big reasons why we use Kanban, is we're able to build ecosystems, and in a way that's much simpler than you could do it before. And what's super cool is now the modern tools really facilitate this. So now, instead of Kanban boards that are physical, that you've got a million different lines going here and there, or even electronic Kanban boards, with the better tools, you're very easily you're able to say, hey, I've got a dependency down here in architects, and it's blocking something moving forward in engineering. And then that can be lifted up to the product management team so they know that it's blocked. And that is an incredibly powerful tool. Give you a quick. So it looks like this. This is one of the, this is our tool. This is actually a huge product management board, pretty complex. And then this is a while ago. There's more now, but these are all the linked workflows. So we immediately know if there's a problem down in one of these support parts of a stream, value stream, right up to the quarterly release. So we know exactly. And by the way, release isn't software; it's the release for the product management team. I think we were talking about this earlier, Marcelo. One of the things that we work really hard to do is, and this is why we loved having Milton on our team, is because Milton was like our conscious. We're always testing things, trying things, thinking about new ways to approach things, but you have to stay grounded in the Kanban fundamentals. And this is why we liked having Milton. It's because Milton was always our voice on our shoulder, sitting there going, nope, don't do that. That's too far. And we love that. And it's helpful when you go about these cleanups. And I did want to say, why Kanban over Scrum, and just to be a little bit controversial here, is the value of the visualization of the work across the process is incredibly powerful, especially for an organization that is broken. And that's usually what we focus on first. We don't even talk about the set number 2 up there, the fantastic metrics that you get and all the improvement you can drive, because your electronic Kanban board is doing all the cycle times, the throughput. You've got lead time, histograms, all those things. We don't even get to those a lot of the time. We're focused on the power of visualizing your work. Okay, foundational item, second one or third one, acceptance criteria. Super critical. It doesn't matter if it's Scrum, Kanban, or anything. We've come to realize that acceptance criteria are truly foundational, and as this extends, leftward into the business side, it's the protocol that you can use for your company. Meaning, a given when-then statement, if you teach it to your product staff and you teach your IT staff how to consume it, and then of course your QA people love it already because that's their test plan. All of a sudden you've got a common language across all these places that don't always talk the same language. Incredibly powerful. We're actually going through this right now with this one is working to get everybody to buy into given when then statements and how to consume them. Yeah, and that's some of that targeted training that we do.
It's extremely powerful in that we're giving permission to people that are downstream to say, no, I'm not accepting that piece of work. Do your job, do your homework, get this acceptance criteria into a shape so I don't start and waste my time. And we're starting to see that evolve with all of our teams. So it's really cool to watch. And that visualization that Scott talked about is really it's that main line that people can understand exactly where they fit into the overall process.
And in the Agile way, Chris and I are always testing and trying different things, and we've discovered something pretty important. Every time we don't use the first 4 steps, something bites us in the butt. So we just don't do that anymore. We just do the first 4 steps in a row, and it works. It may not work perfect for you, but it works fantastic for us. This is one of the tough ones. As Agile coaches, we like to tell people what to do, but we don't like to do what we do sometimes. And we make ourselves run a transformation from a board. And even occasionally we have to remind ourselves, it's time to do a stand-up. We need to get on a regular cadence. We need to get stakeholders in there when we're doing our stand-ups and all these things. And it just helps us live their life and have empathy and stay non-judgmental.
Well, it also
And by the way, go ahead.
sorry, Scott, I was just going to say, it also gives us credibility. Well, one of the common things that people will say, oh, we're really too busy to update our cards. We can't move them across the board. Then we'll flip over into our transformation board. There's Scott and myself, and we're working on a project that's anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 people. And it's got all of our work in there and saying, okay, tell me again that you're too busy. Because this is really how we're managing a transformation across all of these different work processes, types, areas of the business, lines of business. So it really helps in walking the walk.
This is about our Agile team culture, and hopefully Milton can attest to it. We try to make sure that we have those respectful, but sometimes loud and robust debates internally. We hold ourselves accountable for what we're teaching and training people to do. And in our team, we're really not afraid to adapt to those latest set of facts. You could be going one direction and Milton says, hey, we need to do this. We will go, you're right. And that's the direction we need to go. And that really is important for us inside of our Agile team, as well as, making sure to spread the credit around, especially to those people that are adopting Kanban. And we found a huge help just demonstrating that we're truly there to help. That's been Chris, wouldn't you say that's been really instrumental? Is we'll talk about it later, empathy followed by action, but really just demonstrating that you're truly there and you really want to help. You're not trying to build another silo has really been helpful.
Yeah, and Scott's really correct, where it's one of those elements that we do with the teams where let's focus on the tool, on the Kanban tool. If there's a recommendation to maybe change an exit criteria, change some part of the design of the board, and if there's enough unanimity in thought, we'll do it immediately. And we're dealing with folks that are used to getting feedback when they get it, not in days and not in weeks, but sometimes it's months and years. We really want to say that, shorten that pipe between what they need and how we actually resolve it. So we'll do it immediately. We do this all the time. Just last week, we need something as minor as we need a label on all of our cards changed. Scott did that in less than 30 minutes. And so it really creates that sense of engagement that we're part of their daily workflow.
And of course, this is the last one for this foundational part is really just to seek to truly understand the work and their pain. And that takes effort. Because sometimes when you've been doing this for a long time, you see something like, oh, I've seen that before, but you know what? You really haven't. There's some subtlety that's different. Oh yeah. And one thing, we've had this battle about tooling, and we've had this loud conversation about tooling. I mean, we've fought about this nonstop for quite a while amongst a larger group of us, but I wish it didn't matter, but it does. And here's why. And just so you know, the background, my background is I was a global product owner for a Kanban tool for a couple of years, is you very quickly, you can start with any tool, but it's very difficult. You hit that that feature wall very quickly. Hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do that? And what we found this, and we have no connection to Kanbanized for this. We just really like it. Is we haven't found that wall yet, and that's been really important to us. Hey, can you do this? Yes, and we found a way to do it. And for us, that's really big. Because when you have the things like VTB in ServiceNow, or you have the Trellos, those types, we just found they just don't have enough functionality to. I said a bad word. Go ahead, Marcelo.
Why must you hurt me, Scott, and say the ServiceNow phrase?
Oh, yeah. Well, because we've seen it, and we've had to deal with a lot of these, and it even pained me that Kanban was better than the tool that I had worked with for a couple of years. It just was, and so we just had to suck it up. And Chris went out and got it approved for us to use, and it's been quite good. I'm sure there are others out there, but we really like it.
Yeah, it's, I tell people, my first couple of weeks when I was looking at the tool, I'd often ask, I wonder if it does it. And then I realized I was asking the wrong question. It was more to the point where, how do they do it in this particular application? It's so full featured. And what we said, when we were down in California, it's the first time we have an application that we feel that supports the practice of Kanban. Because of all of the capability and functionality. Not to disparage anything else, it's just where we've landed on that particular tool. But it's really been a very, very wise approach that we've landed on that.
That's all to torture you, Milton. We did that on purpose, just to torture you more. All right, let's get into the guts. We're going to get into the key guidance. This is really the good stuff here. So you can tell we like gifts. So selling it.
Scott likes gifts.
Okay, Scott likes gifts. Selling Kanban to the executive management levels. You guys know this is one of the most difficult parts. And we like to call it MVP, metrics, visibility, and pain relief. So focus on metrics. I hate to say it, but it's pretty pictures. And I was a chief operating officer for 15 years. I can say it out loud. Executives like pretty pictures, metrics, graphs. They like pretty pictures. When we had, this was Blue Site, a tool in Kyndryl, when we were doing Blue Site, this is what sold it to clients who adopted it. And it does sell to executives. Then just visibility. This was the big part. We didn't get to all the metrics and things that, the detail and all the metrics that we can show executives, but we did talk a lot about the visibility. And in this case, this is a direct quote from a senior product manager. It was a plea. I just need to be able to see my stuff without a deck and a status meeting. How close am I done? Where are my risks? What the detail is, if I have risk, am I on track, and a clear process for what my PMs need to do to execute. And it was just that plea, and that was incredibly helpful. Just the visibility component that hits all those things. That's what Kanban really, really sings at. And then, of course, you're always looking for executive pain to solve. You're looking for, what are the things that they're complaining about? What are the things that they say in meeting? God, I wish I had this. I just heard something today that was amazing. They were angry they couldn't see a burn down. And if you have seen a project run in Kanban, it's just amazing. I mean, you can have 1,000 cards, but if you need to watch the burn down across a Kanban board, it's amazing for a project. And so, of course, we'll be talking to them about that. Okay. So some quick things here. We need to know, everybody needs to know, it's baby steps. Yes, that's my favorite GIF. We just need to acknowledge that it's in a big company, a big complex company, if that's where you're working in, it's inches per day. And you just have to be okay with that. You're going to get the occasional leaps, you're going to get the occasional pushes backward, but it's just inches a day. It's like a big barge in a canal, and you got to be okay with that. We typically I'm going to go down here. We typically test organizational change tolerance, and we typically default to begging forgiveness. And so far, that's worked for us. It's not going to always work, but it has so far. Know about the setbacks that are going to come. You're going to get somebody coming at you sideways. Don't let it get you off track. Just go have a beer, relax, take it easy, come back the next day and jump back in the saddle. I mean, just don't let them take you off track. On this next one here, we've all talked about champions. I've never had champions work for me. Maybe you guys have. But what we do a lot is nurture and celebrate those early adopters. And they have been invaluable for us throughout the years, is really spending time with them and nurturing them and making sure they're in a position to influence other people. We talked about this one, find executive pain to solve. That's a quick way to make things work. In the situation we're in now, it all started with a VP level guy saying, hey, I need a solution for X. And we jumped on it. And that's what led to the entire organizational transformation. And then just know you can have a fantastic plan. That's great for your transformation. But at the end of the day, we're all just professional cat herders. And so if we're directionally okay, be good with that because it ebbs and flows. Any comments on that? This is a big one. And this is going to have probably some areas that you may or may not agree with, but we really seek to make the desired path that we want people to go the easiest path. So if you don't, it makes life very tough for you because people just, they go down the path that is the easiest. And so you got to really seek to make those alternate paths less easy and yes, sometimes painful. And then of course you got to reinforce good behavior loudly and bad behavior, you try to do it privately, but sometimes publicly is called for. And then we just put this last one in here because we actually had someone say, well, this is Agile. That means I can do anything I want to do. And we had a good laugh at that. You guys have heard that before? Okay. Also, like the inch of the day, know that you're playing the long game. Let me make sure. Okay. I want to double check something. Nope. Okay. So learn I'm going to go here first. Learn the ecosystem and the culture. Of course, you need to know what the cultural tolerance is for change and how fast you can push it, because our job is to be pushing people in the back at the appropriate level. So we got to know the culture to understand how far, how much we can push. Of course, we talked about this, leveraging those early adopters as force multipliers, indispensable. We always seek opportunities to make the transformation theirs. And then probably a huge one that's been beneficial for us. Wouldn't you say, Chris?
It's probably the biggest.
Yeah, don't underestimate the value of empathy followed by action. And those two things together are important because you can show all the empathy in the world and not do anything, and you're just like everybody else to them. But if you follow it up with action, it starts to create gravitational pull. And that's what we seek. And here's the reality check. We all hope for the mythical Bigfoot, which is an executive that fully supports your transformation. You guys may have that. I don't know what it's like. I haven't had that very often. And we're okay with we call it PAL. We're okay with passive aggressive leadership. That means they don't have to publicly support you, but we're good enough if they're passive aggressive in the background, whatever it is, so that they support it in their own way. I mean, the reality is leadership, executives, those folks, they have limited political capital and they're not always willing to spend it on our behalf. And I think we just need to get comfortable with that. We hope for the best, but we're okay with this. That constant forward pressure, we try to resist. We just call it condom. And that's the overzealousness and pushing people too fast through the process. You know, we're all smart folks. We've done Kanban a lot, or at least Agile a lot, but many folks haven't. So they need their time to absorb it as they're going. So you may, you know, the goal might be up here, but they need to hit the waypoints along the way. If you just push them straight here, it doesn't work, or you just hand it to them, it doesn't work because they haven't gone through the process of learning. So we understand that we just do constant forward pressure to the next milestone, and we're good enough with that. And of course, I don't know how you guys are. We're like a hawk looking for opportunities to embed Kanban in the culture. Every chance that we get to use a Kanban and put it in front of an executive, we take, because the more that they learn, the more that the more likely they are to adopt it when we need them to adopt it on a larger basis. So projects, perfect way to do a project is on the Kanban board. Those types of things, we do whatever we can to get in front of them. Any questions before we move on, or did we lose everybody?
No.
I think
Okay, good.
everybody's just engrossed, Scott. I think you, Chris, have a meet 'em out of your hands, so keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Glad you guys are enjoying it so far. So pivot. I think it's important for us as coaches, and it is important for us to keep our eyes and our mind fresh. You know, it's so easy to get jaded. You know, I've been saying this forever, but we really as a team work to keep our eyes very fresh so that we're looking at things with new eyes and really listening to our folks. And with that comes adjusting to the latest set of facts and pivots. And also this allows us to see the nuggets that come in from the field. I mean, we are constantly learning from the nuggets that come from the field, where they say something, you're like, oh my God, that's profound. And we love that kind of thing when it happens.
I was just going to jump in there, Scott, and say,
Yeah.
you know, one of the techniques that Scott and I employ a lot is that if we're in a session with a group, and let's say Scott's leading it or I'm leading it, the other person is in the background listening to the trends, listening to the concept. So you're not actively engaged in running the meeting, and we get a lot of feedback and perspectives by having another set of ears listening to the kinds of questions that are going on. And that's where we get a lot of this, you know, keeping things fresh, new sets of facts, and possibly allows us, as the slide says, to pivot the approach. And that really drives engagement with the stakeholders, because they see and hear their ideas being explored and engaged. So it's one of the things that we do quite a bit.
Go ahead and jump to the next slide. Any other questions on pivot? Okay, here's another big one for us. We, of course, love pilots. We're always pitching pilots. We're always trying to get a pilot. We're always talking to executives about pilots. I'm pitching one to a CTO right now. And we love them because, one, you get to land in a reasonably friendly area. And then you get to be, I hate to say it, like a virus, you know, you just build a little momentum, you build some buzz, and then you're able to grab onto this piece over here. And then you build some buzz and you grab a piece over here. And then you start to build that ecosystem that you can work within. And that's when we can really make things sing. And again, like we said, learning is very targeted, delivered organically. In a pilot, you know, they need it, you give it to them. And then, of course, that expansion to the ecosystem, and it's just less risk. We've seen that big bang happen, and I don't know, Chris, have we seen a big bang that works very well?
Nope. Never.
Okay.
Not in my opinion. And the other thing too with pilots, the really, you know, tracing back to Kanban, the really great thing about a fully functioning Kanban tool is it allows you to build your own metrics. And people only start to appreciate that once they get immersed into the actual value stream that's going on, do you want to instrument how long it takes for that particular part of the process? Is that problematic? All of a sudden, it turns it from just sort of a visualization tool into, I'll say, an audit tool or a metrics tool that says, look, it's not anecdotal anymore. It takes us 5 days to do this. It takes us 25 days to do it. And then it really changes the conversation. Not, it focuses on why is it taking so long and what can we do to solve it, as opposed to why is it late. So you really see these tectonic shifts going on when you approach it that way.
And the reality too is, I don't know. We don't have the luxury of the old days when we have 100 agile coaches and we go out en masse in an army. We have 3 people, sometimes 4, and so we've got to cover a lot of territory. And the only way we can do that is pilots. And again, we talked about this targeted training. Are you guys experiencing the same thing? Are you switching to more of a targeted training style, or are you still doing the bigger trainings, and what's working for you?
In my case, I'm actually trying to push to get training done. Our implementation is flawed, and we're seeing a lot of issues, but management has just not signed off on it.
Yeah.
And in my case, I'm trying to push Kanban, so this is actually really useful for me.
Yeah, Omar, don't be afraid to reach out to Chris and I if you
Yeah.
want to, if some guidance. Sounds like you're fighting some battles.
Yeah, will do, sir. Thank you.
You betcha.
I think targeted trainings are a lot better, but the problem there is, just like you said, management have what they want to do. So it's not what you want, it's what they think you need. So sometimes you bring these things up and they kill it. They kill it with budget, they kill it with a whole lot of stuff. So you're like in an island floating on your own.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, and you just have to look for those little wedges that you can get in there. In our current transformation, I joke around that I can't buy Post-it notes. Expense controls are so tight, but they'll let anybody schedule a meeting with 45 people for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
With absolutely no business outcome out the other end.
Yeah.
So that's what we try to do, is just to try to make this stuff relevant, saying, we've had some instances, one of my buddies here in Canada, they reduced their meetings by 60% through the application of Kanban because the board spoke for themselves.
Yeah.
So great story. It doesn't always happen like that, but when it does, it's really cool to see.
Oh, I want to go back really quick to value stream mapping. Chris brought up something. It's really funny, just the exercise of value stream mapping for a lot of the places that we did. We solved a huge amount of problems because we got all the people from the team in the same room, and they figured out that they all thought about the process differently, which was just hilarious, and they were able to reconcile it. So an important part of value stream mapping.
Yeah, we got called into a situation a few years ago where client was extremely upset because their server build was taking 31 days, 32 days. We got the client, we got the service provider in the same room. We did basically a precursor of what we just shared with you right now. And inside of a month, their cycle time, their lead time was down to 16 days. Didn't hire anybody. They just basically started talking. They understood that the sequencing of their decision process was all out of sequence. And here's a group of people that were yelling at each other for 2 weeks, the 2 weeks prior. In fact, they went out for cocktails after we had the engagement. So that it was such a really quick turnaround. Again, one of those things that really don't happen very often, but it was just so significant that they saw the issue. They saw it when they put it on the board. They all had different understanding about who did what and when. And it was really interesting just to watch, step back and watch them re-architect the process just in flight. It was amazing to see.
So this is the last slide we have for you, and then we'll take some questions. So the reality is there's going to be issues. So we just call this isolate or adjust, but you need to plan and strategize for the known skirmishes and be prepared for those unknown skirmishes, because they're going to happen, and people are going to take a run at you from the side. If you're in a large, complex organization, it just happens, and it's okay. And we like to say it's okay sometimes to break rocks. Like that's like a hammer on a nail. It's okay to do that sometimes, but you can't be a hammer looking for a nail, and you can't fight every fight. So the rest of it is we like to be like water. And that is sometimes we just wear people down until they're gone, until it's eroded away, their resistance. Or what we've done lately that's worked pretty well too is you just isolate those detractors. And what's really cool is when you're doing an ecosystem and you do here, and you maybe do one other place in the ecosystem, that's not significant. But when you start to get 50%, 3/4 of the ecosystem, all of a sudden you start to create a gravitational pull. And those initial those detractors, or those people who don't want to participate, eventually that gravitational pull pulls them into the bigger ecosystem. And so we see that a lot, especially now, where those initial detractors are having to join the crowd because of that gravitational pull. And that is it. You guys have any questions?
That's what we do.
Yep.
That was amazing.
Well, we had some questions floating out there from Tom Kane earlier. So Tom, I don't know if you want to circle back to that now.
I don't know if it was so much of a question as we were talking about offshoring resources. I've done a lot of that work where we've offshored. One of the reasons that the executives like to do that is because it's more of a disciplined model. Working with teams in Manila and India, they're a lot more disciplined than sometimes US resources in their processes. So didn't know if you've come across that. I've always trained the offshore resources, and I've not had a problem with being in contact with them, but I have had a problem with how can I enforce some of the stuff that I'm doing? I just can't, because I'm not local, right? Sometimes difficult.
Can you say what kind of discipline are they applying, Tom?
Just human discipline. When you tell them to do something, they do it verbatim. If you ask them process-wise to do something, they're very disciplined about making that process.
Yeah, process is much more formalized.
Correct.
Yeah. I have also noticed in a couple of instances that one of the detractors, that there's a lot more turnover, which has a significant impact on the knowledge that you've transferred, right? And keeping those processes running smoothly.
It's a good point. There's a lot of different risks for sure.
Can I just come in, James, here? So not from, it sounds like that problem is the same as what it's always been. And some of the cultures is that they are driven to promotion with the high turnover. And that's what I used to get when I had teams across Asia and the Pacific. And there's not a lot you can do. The only thing that I managed to do was have really strong relationships with management and try and persuade people to kind of stay longer in the role so that it lasts. You get the benefit a lot longer, but they have to let them go, because that's just the culture of how they progress. There's too many. Especially when I was working with IBM, there was too many competitors, and there was more money elsewhere. So that was another issue.
Yeah, that happens. I think that happens a lot. I'm trying to resist saying that out loud, but I think it's really important. When you do when you do offshore, you probably should have a bonus pool ready to go because you know that there's other companies doing the same thing you are. And so you're going to need some kind of a retention plan to keep those folks doing what you're doing and have a good culture. But it's tough, but it still is the go-to, and it still allows the executive suite to defer some of the really important. I mean, you can say we have fantastic success across the world with a huge amount of cultures, but there's still some underlying process things that we need to solve. And so sometimes we find ourselves having to remind people that this is all great, but at the end of the day, we have some process issues and we have some structural issues that we also have to address. And sometimes you just have to wait for the pain that comes from that. And honestly, we take the long view. We plant seeds like crazy. Hey, if this happens, give us a call. Oh, looks like you're on mute, Marcelo.
I have a question, maybe too. On your first slide, you talked about initiating cadence, dependencies, and risk management. So in the cadence part of it, do you kind of try to let them understand what Kanban is as regards to cadence, or do you just, what discussion takes place there? And then two, does it matter what kind of work the team is doing, even if it's just a tech team or applications, does it matter when you introduce Kanban to them?
Well,
I can take this, Chris, or you can take it, whatever you want to do.
You can riff off it too. We get them, we do the value stream mapping. We identify, of course, their types of work. We get them on the board. And then we have a lot of intensive guidance with their management and with the team over the course of perhaps a month. And in there, we're introducing the concepts of stand-ups and ensuring that people, we can talk about social contracts and how you want to work this and how do you want to update the cards and all those. Those are all things that we can bring along in the discussion, but we're really trying to build the muscle memory that says the card is the unit of work that's moving through the business. And if it's not in a card, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And we're trying to drive that to say, because everything else is just anecdotal and this speaks for you. And this is where we get back to with this notion of empathy. We try to make sure that it's a vehicle for you to share the concerns that you have about a particular process. We don't have enough approvals. We don't have enough people. All of these things. We can document that in a non-confrontational way in a Kanban board. Why is that card not moving? Why is that software not going? Well, because we don't have enough people. We don't have enough architects to review the design specs. All of those things. You can see that when you properly construct it. And that's where we create that critical mass that Scott's talking about. It's saying, yeah, we're telling their story. They're telling their own story. And by the way, they don't need to be there in a meeting, because that's where, Scott introduced me to this concept where, when he was doing this work with one of the major financial institutions, we would drag the executives to the board. Your answer is in the board. Don't ask me, or you can ask me now, but I'll show you how you can find this. And then what we find, or what I find, and again, this is just Scott and Chris talking about things, the tone of the conversation changes. It's more in depth. It's not about where is my data. I've got data. Now what do I want to do about it? And so that's where we try to lead them into this without saying, okay, we're going to run a stand-up every day. No, we'll say, what do you guys need? What's the timeline in your area?
When we go ahead, Terry.
Sorry, I was going to say that's a pretty big step, right? That's a big gap, because you got tons of data, you collect tons of data, but then it's translating that data. What are you learning from that data? What is that data telling you? Because that's where all the nuggets are.
I think Godwin was kind of pointing to something. I think this is where you're going, Godwin, is, what are the cadences that you choose to do first, and what do you want to do first? And we really, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to say this out loud. We do stand-ups, we have very specific guidance for stand-ups.
Mhm.
And then we really kind of listen for needs. Not everybody needs, if you're not doing development, maybe you don't need backlog grooming as much. Maybe you don't need to be taught that right away. Maybe you don't need retros. Of course, eventually you need to get to a retro, but we really try first, get them going on stand-ups, and we nag the bejesus out of them to get it right, to get their cards right. We really focusing them on the board first, and then we start to throw in other ones. It's really based on what we're hearing on the ground. Does that answer your question, Godwin? Is that what you were trying to get to?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
We do retros, but we don't call them retros.
Yeah.
We make them more informal, less invasive.
We really just try to do what works, and every team is different, especially when you get in the business side. And we really think the business side, IT is pretty straightforward. There's set steps. You might move them around a little bit, but there's set steps. But the business side is way tougher, way more complex, way more parallel work going on. So we really have to put our ear to the ground and listen for what they need.
Yeah, here's a really good example. We've been working with a couple different teams, architects and some folks in contracting. This took them about 30 minutes before they understood what Kanban was all about, and they were fully bought in. So what would normally take us 4 to 6 weeks took us 2 days with these folks. And that's what we mean, just listen to the audience and play to their strengths.
And go at their speed. That was a good one, Godwin. I was wondering if somebody get to that's a really good, subtle question.
Yeah, well, that's why he has his own cryptocurrency, Scott.
Nice.
Yeah. It's up and coming, Godwin coin. Look for it.
I will. Anybody else have any questions? Well, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. It's a little bit different than being live. We could have more fun being live, but we could actually see your reactions and talk directly to you. But hopefully this worked.
Yeah, this was great.
Thanks.
It was definitely great. So I'm really happy to have been witnessed this amazing presentation. I mean, I've learned, and totally gonna rewatch it in YouTube to have probably more. If I have questions, I can contact you via LinkedIn. And guys, just wanted to let you know that to finish up this meetup, we like to have a picture. You will be able to check on Scott and Chris's LinkedIn, and because I'm gonna tag them so you can
Hey, Neelu,
yeah,
can I ask one more question?
yeah, sure.
Okay, so what was your biggest takeaway from this? What is the thing that jumped out at you guys? We're always very curious about that.
Awesome.
I think for me is the value stream mapping, because that word has always been bastardized. I don't want to call any names, but so for me, I think it's that value stream mapping, because that's the real nugget of whatever you're doing, because bringing everybody together and talking about those who had questions, those had.
Don't you find it's about half art, half science?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I think mine was about the executives and accepting any support that they would give you, right? Because they really don't. And that's such a frustrating thing, because you're pushing this boulder uphill and they only want to see one thing. So they are not going to, until they see successes or successes in their way, they're not going to jump on board. But then when
they're not going to spend their capital on you.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, one of our really great OKR, if you want to call it an OKR, is that we've been doing this for 16 months in the same organization. So longevity in agile transformation is oftentimes a really good thing, right?
Translated meaning stubbornness and persistence.
And they've left us alone. So
I think Tom wanted to say something as well, Tom, or not really?
Oh no, I was agreeing with Terry. That's exactly right. You spending that, trying to get them to spend their capital on you is a big deal.
Big deal.
Yeah. So I really got some key nuggets that's going to help me, at the stage where my team is. Some of the quotes that jumped out at me was, if it's not on the card, the work doesn't exist. That kind of conversation can really help with one of the issues that I'm having in just, enabling the team or helping them, guiding them through the process of documenting the work. They always show up in daily stand-ups talking about what's not on the board. And that's something, an anti-pattern I've been trying to deal with. So those are powerful things that I took out of here. And the fact that when we look at that board, most of our answers come from there. And also the fact that, especially for a team whose Kanban maturity level is at 1, we don't have to launch everything at the same time. So my takeout is that once you establish those basic things like, the daily stand-up, if you do, listening for the needs is more important than trying to just launch everything at the same time. Just like you said, inches per day. So those were powerful things that I'm going to take back from tomorrow. And I'm sure that, it will do some work for me. So thank you.
That's a good point. It's like a masseuse. You have a massage, and some of them just go through routine, and that's not really beneficial. But then you get the masseuses that listen to their hands, and they know exactly where you need your help. That's what we need to be, is those that are listening to their hands and understanding what people need the most.
I had no idea where you're going with that, but okay.
I know exactly where he's going with that, because I'm thinking to the
Everybody's
best
thinking
business
that's
I ever had was the one who every few minutes, when they found something not good on Marcelo's back, was, what are you feeling? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? And by the time that person was done, I was like, okay, where am I again? Because I was like way up here, floating.
So by the way, everybody, Chris is like that. This is not a different Chris. This is the same Chris. He cuts up all the time. We laugh. We have a great time, and we love doing this.
That's fantastic. Anyone else wants to share their learnings?
Hey, Milton, what's your thoughts?
When are you coming back?
My thoughts, I think that my great learning today was about the specific training on direct training, because we're still trying to evangelize everybody. And
yeah. I just want to give a shout out for Milton. Milton is like the developer, the engineering whisperer. I've never seen anybody work with developers and engineering so well, so rapidly. And I didn't know he was going to be on the call, but I'm glad he is. Yeah. He's just a joy to work with.
Pretty awesome. But don't steal him, because we're going to steal him first.
It's okay. I now know where to go look.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. We know where the buddy is.
Everybody needs a good Kanban coach to help them.
Yeah.
That's Marcelo Smith, Milton. Marcelo Smith. Look him up.
Yeah. No. Smith spelled Lopez. Obrigado.
Man, I love that. I'm Googling it. Marcelo, can we put that in parentheses in your name?
You can put that in parentheses in my name. I've been called Agent Smith before. I'm okay with that. I mean, it's all right. I've got the sunglasses to prove it.